For more, joining us today, we have with us Dr. Myong-hyun from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Thank you for taking the time to come in today.
It's good to be here.
So Trump has said directly he doesn't care how long talks with North Korea take, as long as there are no nuclear and missile tests. That might suggest that there is no end in sight to resolve this problem with these issues with North Korea. What do you make of Trump's latest comments?
Well, clearly there are two clocks ticking in the Korean Peninsula when it comes to North Korean nuclear issue. One is the clock ticking regarding North Korea's nuclear development, and the other clock is the sanctions having an impact on the North Korean economy. So we know that on the nuclear front, North Korea is abiding by the test freeze that they declared earlier this year, actually January 1st this year, with the Kim Jong-un speech. So in that sense, we can presume that there's no further development in North Korea's nuclear development. But on the other hand, sanctions are still remain in place and having probably an increasing impact on the North Korean economy. So if you compare the two dynamics, you can say that it's North Korea that's getting more desperate as time goes by. So in that sense, Trump can actually sit back and relax and see how North Korea responds to ongoing pressure on its economy. And eventually, probably Trump is expecting that Kim Jong-un might come to the negotiation table, offer a better negotiation terms to the United States.
You say that North Korea are under more pressure, but some cynical minds would say that actually North Korea are very happy to have this delayed because they don't want to denuclearize, and it gives them a chance to stockpile more nuclear weapons while they wait. What do you say to this kind of criticisms?
Well, clearly there's an upside to waiting. I mean, North Korea will have more time to perfect its ICBM and nuclear technology. But on the other hand, I think that they have, they need way more time to develop and perfect this difficult and high cutting-edge weapons technology, whereas the clock ticking in the economic side is actually real. It's taking place every day, and we know that North Korea's level of import, which we can take it as a proxy for their income level within the country, has gone down by 40% this year compared to last. So in that sense, I think, on any economy, whose income goes down, national income goes down by 40%, that's an indication of major depression. So sure, North Korea is not a typical country, so they probably have a much higher threshold for pain, but that doesn't mean that they're not suffering from economic pain inflicted by the sanctions regime. So I think, North Korea probably is looking at two clocks ticking at the same time, and eventually North Korea will come to an understanding, a decision point where they'll have to send a message to Washington.
On that economic point, Trump actually also stressed that during his rally speeches over the weekend. He said, if I quote directly, between China, Russia and South Korea, what a location, is going to be fantastic. But from that quote, do you get the feeling that he is very actually more interested in perhaps the potential economic benefit for US to get involved in the North Korea if the North Korea decides to denuclearize and open up to the international community ever?
Sure. I mean, if the U.S. can get a slice of action, if North Korea opens up economically, well, I think President Trump will definitely take it. But I think what the phrase or expression you used, water location, is more connected with the fact that he's a real estate developer in New York City. So definitely he sees that the location is very important. After all, North Korea is surrounded by the second largest economy in the world, which is China. On the other hand, on the other side, you have Japan, the third largest economy. And to the north and south of North Korea, we have Russia and South Korea, which are neck to neck as number 11 or 12th largest economy in the world. So in that sense, North Korea has plenty of geographic and economic opportunities lying right next door to develop itself. So I think it's more of a reminding of North Korea of the message that he sent to Kim Jong-un in Singapore last June, that if North Korea commits to economic development and denuclearization, then there'll be so much payoff for him and for his country.
As they say, location, location, location.
Exactly.
Anyway, meanwhile, the U.S. Special Representative Steve Biegun, Trump's point man on North Korea at the moment, is back in South Korea right now. He's met with various officials, such as his South Korean counterpart, Lee Do-hun. During the meeting, he stressed the need to bring an end to the Korean War, but then added that, quote, the primary requirement for us to get to the end point is to achieve final, fully verified denuclearization of North Korea. Now, that very specific mention of final, fully verified denuclearization, or FFVD, as we also know, seems quite telling. Do you think he deliberately wants to stress its importance in front of his Korean counterpart?
Well, clearly there's that message. I mean, we can, the message itself is innocuous enough to take it as at the face value that this is just again an expression of a matter of principle, which is North Korea should commit a complete denuclearization. But then in the context of a growing gap in terms of between the two allies in terms of how to approach North Korea in terms of economic engagement and political engagement. Yes, in that sense, I think there's certain, like a message coming out, implicit message coming out of Seoul that we should reward the North Korea for having committed and then maintained freeze on its nuclear development. And here, like rewarding North Korea would be not a political reward of a meeting with Kim Jong-un, but which already happened a couple of times, but would be rewarding North Korea economically. So that's not something that the United States is not committed to yet. So I think clearly this innocuous matter of principle statement by Steve Biegun is again a reminder to the South Korean government that maybe it should slow down a little bit when it comes to engaging North Korea.
What do you make of the timing of Biegun's trip to South Korea? It comes while there's still no word from North Korea on his talks with North Korean counterparts, and while relations with South Korea also strained with a difference in position and opinion on how to deal with North Korean sanctions and cooperation. What message do you think he brings from Washington?
Well, I think he's going to bring the same message he has brought to Seoul and also to Pyongyang, that North Korea will have to offer very concrete roadmap or timeline towards denuclearization. I mean, the time is not the point, it's about the details of what North Korea is committed to do in terms of denuclearization. So, but then the fact that he's actually coming to Seoul so often rather than going to Pyongyang, it's an indication that the negotiation with North Korea is at an impasse. So there's not much progress being made on that front. On the other hand, the fact that he's coming to Seoul is that it's actually an indication that the United States wants to have actually an influence when it comes to South Korea's formulation of how to engage North Korea going forward. We know that there are many bureaucratic meetings taking place right now at the South Korean government, trying to figure out how to engage North Korea and also come up with the details of how to deliver the promise made in the Panmunjom Declaration, as well as the Pyongyang summit. So I think Biegun wants to have a say in this process.
What do you think South Korea can offer the U.S. at this point?
Well, essentially, what South Korea can offer to U.S. at this point is a promise and commitment that it's going to not to, speed ahead of the denuclearization talk between Pyongyang and Washington, to put priority on the engagement between Seoul and Pyongyang. That's something that I think definitely South Korean government can provide to Biegun at this point.
So, while this is happening, so the U.S. State Department has released photos of illegal ship-to-ship transfers of refined petroleum to North Korean vessels out at sea. Now, they were very high-quality pictures. You could see all the details, and they were quite damning, and perhaps damning in order to try and send a message not only to Pyongyang, but also perhaps to some other players as well, such as Russia and China, who have been accused of taking part in these illegal transfers of oil. Do you think they will listen at all?
Well, I think China and Russia have a ready answer to this kind of reminder from the international community that these governments are not abiding by the international sanctions regime, and that is that China and Russia abide by the official sanctions, but they can really control all the criminal elements who could be bypassing, evading the sanctions measures. So in that sense, I don't think it's going to influence the Chinese or Russian position regarding North Korea. But on the other hand, China and Russia will use this opportunity to remind Washington that North Korea has made quite a progress in terms of denuclearization and keeping stability in the region by not carrying out further testing, whether it's nuclear or missiles. So there should be some sort of incentive mechanism, economic kind, to keep North Korea in its best behavior. So I think this is an ongoing political tug of war between China and Russia on one side and Washington on the other side. And this is just a latest salvo in that regard.
China and Russia and North Korea on one side, US on the other side. Now, if we take that as well, so there are rumors that Kim Jong-un will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin before the end of the year. Various North Korean officials have traveled to Russia in the past few weeks, and Russian officials are also stoking this rumor, saying that they're discussing it and it's in the plans. Do you think we are likely to see a Kim-Putin summit before the end of the year? And what would the two sides want to gain from such a meeting?
Well, clearly it's about time for Putin and Kim to sit together, have a major summit. We already seen the summit between Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, between Trump and Kim, then also several inter-Korean summit between our President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. So it's about time for Russian president to have a meeting with Kim Jong-un. And this is clearly projects, for Russia, this actually projects an image of prestige and power. It shows that Russia is still a major player in the international politics, that counts, and that it has influence over North Korea. So this sends a message not just to Seoul or Pyongyang, it sends a message to Washington that Vladimir Putin can actually assist the United States in achieving stability and peace in different parts of the world. Case in point, Syria. So Iran, that's another example. So here comes the latest example, which is North Korea. So this is clearly, there's an upside for Russia to invite Kim Jong-un to Moscow and have a meeting. So what's the upside for North Korea? North Korea can keep up the momentum, the diplomatic momentum that the peace and stability is here. It's not going to go away. So actually, the United States should actually join this train and try to be more flexible when it comes to maintaining sanctions against Pyongyang, which actually undermines, from their point of view, undermines the stability. So this is another a strategy by Pyongyang to show to the rest of the world and to Washington that, except for Washington, everybody agrees with North Korea that denuclearization is not going to be a priority, but just it should take place in the context of increasing engagement by North Korea with the rest of the world.
How do you think the US President Donald Trump would react to a Kim-Putin meeting at this time as well? When there were rumors about Kim and Xi Jinping meeting earlier this year, he almost seemed to have felt betrayed by Xi Jinping because he thought Xi Jinping as a close friend and ally and said, actually, Xi Jinping has been influencing Kim Jong-un to be more difficult. Do you think Trump will take a similar reaction?
I think that might not be the case with with Putin. With China, I think Trump's understanding of China is that China is behind North Korea. Essentially, China is using North Korea as a pawn to extend its influence over the region. And I think Trump's understanding of Russia's objective in Asia, in Northeast Asia, is quite different. I think from his understanding, Russia doesn't have a major strategic objective in this part of the world. So therefore, he might actually think of a Russian-North Korean dealing from a more benign perspective, that Putin is doing a very constructive role to bring stability to the region, and also to convince Kim Jong-un that he should denuclearize as soon as possible.
And finally, just one more thing before we go. So the US midterm elections are set to take place in just over a week's time. Trump said he would meet with Kim Jong-un after the midterms. But as we know, he's also saying it could be delayed until next year as well. But do you think the results of these midterm elections will have any effect, any bearing on Trump's North Korea policy going forward?
Well, right now, the expectation about the U.S. midterm elections is pretty much aligned. The experts believe the Republicans might lose the House, but will likely to keep the Senate. So a major Democratic upset is so far likely, but we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen until the election results come in. So in case there's a major Democratic upset and has a major victory over the Republicans, both in the Senate and the House, then I think politically President Trump will be put into a corner. So he might actually think of North Korea as a way out of his political dilemma, because chances that if Democrats have achieve a major victory in the midterm elections, they might put a lot of political pressure on the White House, such as the Russian issues or any other issue. So in that sense, he might use North Korea as a way out. But on the other hand, as expectation dictates, I don't think there will be a major upset. If that's the case, Trump will probably stay the line when it comes to North Korea, and probably delay a meeting with Kim Jong-un until North Korea delivers what he wants from North Korea, which is a major nuclear concession.
So it will be an interesting midterm elections, and we'll be keeping a close eye on it here on Arirang as well. Anyway, that's all we have time for, Dr. Go. Thank you for coming on the show as
My
always,
pleasure. Okay.
and it's good to have you.